Hello and welcome to Cindershadow Gaming. I am your host Cindershadow, and it's about time I talk about Activision Blizzard. Well, Activision Blizzard. This is an interesting one. I've been following the story for about a week. I haven't been able to actually speak about it because I have my own thoughts on what's going on here, and there's a lot of stuff that just doesn't seem to add up. Like the whole thing is questionable at best. I don't know where this is going to go, and there's a lot of things that don't seem to be happening here that normally in this type of situation you would be seeing. The major one that I'm seeing right now, we have a giant workforce that's looking at walking out, making push towards what they call a union, but we don't have any unions in California stepping up to help them. That is where I go, what is going on here? Usually where we've seen this with Amazon right now, where the unions are showing up at the Amazon's rallies and stuff like that to help them, to give them the tools needed to actually push forward and to talk about unionization. And we don't see that with Blizzard. We're not seeing that at all. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I've looked, I don't see it. If someone has some details on any of the unions in California stepping up the plate, especially the Directors Guild, you would think they would be the ones to do this and turn, instead of being writers for TVs and shows, they would become a full entertainment style union. This to me seems to be in their wheelhouse. This seems to be they should be the ones helping this along, but they're not. I don't see it. People are calling for it and people aren't. It's not happening. They have their place. Like unions, ultimately, this is why we have weekends. This is why we have normalization of wages. And when you push forward a union, then in some places, like in a grocery store here, they have a scaled system. So the more hours you work, the more money you start to earn. And it gets just a flat rate across the board. But what we've seen with the Activision Blizzard is certain people are making more money than other people, which is not right. They should be making the same amount, sort of. A lot of the people that are being employed at these companies are interns. They're new. They're fresh out of school. And are you going to hire someone fresh out of school and pay them the exact same amount as their counterpart that has been there for 5-10 years? No. And that is part of another reason why the unions, if they were to be brought in, they would say what they're doing is right. The lawsuit in itself that's come against Activision Blizzard with discrimination and the telling of tales like these frat boy parties, the Cosby Room I'm seeing here, like that just blows my mind. But ultimately, they don't amount to anything. They're things that people are doing. And to me, it looks like it's not going to go anywhere, mainly because in the lawsuit, they cite Gamergate. And Gamergate went up and down, and this was an event that took place from 2014 to 2016 with some individuals and game journalists. The whole point of Gamergate was gamers and devs want journalists' integrity. They want to sit there and see them rate games based on what they actually see and not on the amount of money they are being paid. But instead it became this whole movement saying that mostly women are being treated unfairly in gaming and they're receiving harassment, hate, and everything like that. That also came down to a realization of how many women actually play games. If you take a look at the actual stats when it comes to it, women in some games take majority of them, but their game's more centered and more focused on that, not so much in gaming. We've seen this with Magic the Gathering, a big push to welcome more women into the game, but ultimately there's a different mindset when it comes to gaming and playing games in general, and competitive. When you get into the competitive style games, generally it's going to be more men playing the competitive style games because they have a more competitive nature. That is in their nature. Right now, there's a big push to push against that, and that is why these things, like this lawsuit, is probably going to fail. It's probably coming forward, and you'll see stuff just go to the wayside. And like I've seen with some of the stuff going on with the Blizzard walkout that happened, it just doesn't seem correct. They've got up to 3,000 people at their main there, and it looks like about the picture I'm looking at, I see maybe 100 people in this crowd, which I can bring that. Will this allow me to bring it over? Yeah, I'm seeing that's maybe 100 people. If they've got 3,000 people there, that should easily dwarf the entire area. So there's a lot of details here that I just don't know about. I'm not there. If you guys are there, let me know what's really going on here, because to me there is something that doesn't make sense. Some of these posters they have here saying every voice matters, correct. Lead responsibility, correct. The major one right in the front there is please donate to things like Black Girls Code and all these things out there, these groups out there that are trying to push forward an equity instead of equality. And when you push towards equity, you're putting someone else up on a pillar and you're tokenizing them. And that's not what this is about. If you guys want to turn around and go forward, you need to reach out to the unions and say, listen, we need help unionize, becoming a union. I don't know how that would work in this case because everything is such a big deal. And if you unionize one company in this sense, you've got to bring in a lot of other developers and they all have to sign up. Then you're paying union dues. But at the same time, this creates a war fund to fight against this type of thing. Once again, they're not there. They're not picking up the pieces here. And something doesn't make sense. None of this makes sense in my head. They're pushing for LGBTQ. They're pushing for people of color. They're pushing for women or transgendered people to be more of the front forward facing of the companies. But in this space, you're looking at maybe 10 to 20% of the actual workforce. That's combined. That's combined. They're saying they got to stop hiring so many male people in these positions, but they're the ones that are building this up. So that then comes down to education. And in education, if the developing departments and where you're doing computer graphics and details and stuff like that, if that is solely dominated by men, then why hasn't the education or the universities really done a true push for more women and more people going, oh wait, they are. There is a thing called affirmative action, and that's where this is kind of where it's gone and where it's going to go and why it's ultimately probably going to fail. The lawsuits I don't see succeeding, mainly because they're citing Gamergate and everything that was found with that was based on a lie. From what I've seen, there's been reports from the FBI saying that they didn't charge anyone in there because there was no one to charge. The whole thing, this was the two stances of Gamergate. One stance was that their women in gaming are being harassed and bullied, and the other stance of the gamers saying we need journalists to actually tell the truth and rate the games properly. That was the two stances of Gamergate. The FBI said no to the harassment and the bullying. It didn't happen. Didn't happen because everyone gets bullied equally. and the game journalists just kind of ran with their own narrative. So there's a lot of stuff going on here that I just don't understand ultimately what the whole detail. Now, I did find an article that actually came out yesterday talking about a former Blizzard development and ArenaNet Undead Labs founder. We need unionization, and this is where they're pushing. They want the unionization, but once again, they're not coming forward. When I've seen this in the past, when I've seen companies say, listen, or employees say, we need to form a union, we need to do this, we need this, they don't have a clue on what they're doing, and usually someone steps up to the plate and helps them along. But this is an interesting. So this is penned by Jeff Strain, writes an open letter calling for full unionization within the games industry. Like I said, this is more of the Directors Guild style union that would go there, and they're the ones that control or that they push the stuff for writing and for movies, for TV shows. George Lucas of Star Wars, used to be part of them and actually was exiled from them because he pushed against one of the boundaries that they had. And one of the boundaries in the Directors Guild is that everything needs to be considered human at some point, and to create a humanization on the big screens. And in there, where George Lucas wanted to go against that, and that's why in Star Wars you see these fantastic creatures that don't look humanoid. That was ultimately what it came down to, and why he ultimately left the Directors Guild. Now, back in the days of Hollywood and all this other stuff, the unions really did feel more like mafia style tactics, and so there is that distance behind them, why a lot of people want to shy away from them, because then it's their way or the highway, and it just creates a whole new dynamic. But ultimately, if you're wanting to go forward and unionize as a workforce, you need to talk to some of the existing unions to talk about going forward. But in this case, they're not, because I think one of the reasons why is because of the way that they're pushing it. They're pushing these donations to these other causes that have nothing to do with what's going on with the lawsuits or the employees. They're pushing all that money now away from the cause of the employees, forming a union and actually getting equal rights. So it's now distracting from the entire lawsuit and in the entire workforce being upset about this whole thing. So following the unfolding situation, Strain shared a letter and sent it to the employees at his new company to IGN with permission to publish in full below. Strain, who joined Blizzard in '96, game programmer before working on StarCraft, Diablo, and briefly as team lead and lead programming on World of Warcraft, shared that in a recent lawsuit against Blizzard did not surprise him that even as early in the company's history, its culture ultimately drove him to leave and co-found ArenaNet. I thought ArenaNet was part of Blizzard. The Activision Blizzard discourse this week have left me disgusted and repulsed. Not surprised. Stream writes. Anyway, let's get into this. It's time is what it's called. Toxic is a word used frequently today that in some ways it is lost its true power and force of the word. No, there is a lot behind it. There's a toxic way that people do play games, and that happens to be the obsessive compulsive nature of playing games. We increasingly treat the word flippantly, sometimes even playfully. There are some situations, people, and institutions that simply can't be brushed off with toxic and instead must be described more accurately: abusive, cruel, abhorrent, unacceptable, illegal. That is no, I don't accept this right off the bat. The word toxic is used in a way right now that is a mental health state that is not indicative of a normal set of rules. You have like League of Legends, where people get toxic in the way that they play the game, and they start ranting and raving on how people maybe didn't stay in their lane or didn't play the game as the best the other players on that game feel that they could have. And they get really crazy in that sense. You don't even stay in the proper mindset for these games. And that's where the toxic mindset is. Now, to call it abusive, cruel, abhorrent, unacceptable, illegal is pushing a boundary and actually creating a new term for the to the word, saying it should be up to the courts to decide what toxic is. No, there is people that just go off the handle and should be. Ultimately, if you're online, you can turn it off. You can walk away from it and let the toxic people go away. And that is what you have to do. You have to tune it out some days, and some days that's all you can do. Now, if this is being done in real life situations, not online, I still don't consider online a real life situation, because online you can always shut it off. However, this is like distracted driving in that sense. People drive distracted on their cell phones or doing stuff like that, and that is why there's fines for that. Is that the solution here? Is that what we're going to push for? The criminalization of people being upset online because they lost a game? People from the 80s with the Nintendo generation throwing controllers at the wall would be considered toxic. So now you're just to lay this down there, this would then turn into a place where you're going to be charged a fine for throwing your controller at a wall. That's what he's asking for here when you break it right down. And you can't do that. You're in your own space if no one's getting hurt. This is a mental health state that just goes off the handle. It's a very quick and emotion-filled situation, and that is what's going on there, and why sometimes you just got to tune people out. The Activision Blizzard disclosure this week have me left disgusted, repulsed, but not at all surprised. I joined a very early stage Blizzard as a game programmer in '96 when there were several dozen employees. I knew the 3 founders and the senior leadership well and hosted frequent dinners with them in my home. Over the next 4 years, I worked on the earliest versions of Blizzard's iconic titles, including StarCraft and Diablo, and briefly the team lead and lead programmer of World of Warcraft. In '98, after a cataclysmic meeting with one of the founders over objections to dismembered and impaled female body parts in the beta version of Diablo, my wife and I began planning to leave Blizzard. Okay, so they take bodies and they're going to dismember them in Diablo, and they're going to be put on spikes, and it's part of the the environment or the setting of the world. And then you have a problem with this back in '98, and that's why you left it. So you didn't speak up against it, against something that you didn't feel was right. But I don't understand this line of thinking here. Ultimately, I joined a few like-minded colleagues and moved to 1,000 miles away from Blizzard's sphere of influence to start an independent studio. At my time at Blizzard, left an incredible mark on my life and career that continues to this day. Most importantly, it showed me how abusive cultures can propagate and self-amplify over time. How hardcore gamers only is a smokescreen for bro culture. Where are you getting this? Hardcore gamers only. Gamers. Anyone can be a gamer. But the mindset is mostly in tune to men in that wanting to be competitive. It's not the same sense. That is not bro culture. I don't sit there and go play a game and say, hey, hey bro, good game. It's not, no, that's not bro culture. Hardcore gamers only and bro culture? What? No. how fostering a sense of exceptionalism inhibits people from speaking up because they should deal with it if they love the company and its games, and how passive leadership and turns a blind eye to ultimately be the most abusive thing of all. This is 100% no. People have spoken up for years against this type of thing. People that play these games regularly understand the toxic mentality that people are doing and know when to turn off the game. That is plain and simple what you got to do. Sometimes you got to get up and walk away. If you're playing a game, if you're sitting there for an hour, get up, walk out of your chair for at least 5 minutes. It will let you come back and refresh what's going on and let the toxic vibe go away. That is what you do. That is mostly what professionals say you should do, is get up at least for 5 minutes once an hour if you were playing a video game. And that way you can reset, come back to the game, and lose the negative mental space that you're going to be in. If you are having problems with getting through a level of a game, this is a great way to refocus. We do this in my job. If you have something that's frustrating in your job, you shut down for a few minutes, walk away, and refocus. That is what you have to do some days. Now, when it comes to the esports version of these things, they are playing grueling matches that take over hours at a time. You're playing Magic the Gathering. Some of these tournaments take all entire day. There is time in between matches that you can sit there and relax. So that sit there and relax is built into the games, so you can do that. You come down off the adrenaline, the highs that come with playing games. You're talking about hardcore gamers only being a bro culture is 100% false narrative that is just, it's not going to go anywhere. This mentality is not going to help your cause, because this is literally a mental health state. This is not what it is. I've attempted to create a healthier, more decent, more supportive environment in each of the studios I have started since leaving Blizzard. None of them were perfect, but I've tried to learn and improve each time. I've become increasingly careful on my hiring and selective in my choice of financial and publishing partners to give these healthier environments a greatest chance to flourish. At the end of the day, though, my studio employs at most a few hundred people. As we have seen through the disclosures this week, independent studios, even with the best intentions, cannot set the standards for the industry. So what he's complaining about here is that he is a small indie department that cannot turn around and push the standards that he wants everyone else to be at. There's a thing in Canada and employers, you have best practices where you, ideally, this is the best way to do things or the best ideas. And there is several different ways to do something. And sometimes when you speak up, you then bounce the ideas coming forward that will create a more streamlined way to do things in the long run. What he's saying here, ultimately what he's confirming here, is the gaming culture will always be toxic and you cannot change that. Mainly because this is a mental health state that really does push you beyond that. So this doesn't do anything towards helping people becoming unionized. This is feelings, opinion piece, and ultimately, Strain, it's not going to be the way you think it's going to work out, because obviously you've already seen this, that no matter what standards you put in place, the entire industry as a whole is going to continue that, because you have thousands of people playing these games and they're going to play the games to the best of their ability at any given time. They're going to lose, you're going to win, and we've created a culture where losing is still a win. And mainly, if you want to get a win out of a loss, see what you did wrong and make the changes, and then maybe in the next game you can be a little bit better. But there's always this goal, push forward in gaming to be competitive. And that is where it is. If you make a game that is less competitive, the games are a lot more fun. They're about fun, and that is going forward. This has nothing to do with unequal pay in the developer space. This is him saying that everyone playing the games are just being toxic. The tone and tenor of the entire industry is set by giants, the places with the largest number of entry-level jobs, and the places with the largest, more profitable titles. During my 25 years of working alongside talented developers, I've heard hundreds of profoundly disturbing stories about the industry experiences. I've also seen the cycle repeat itself numerous times across multiple companies throughout the industry. There has certainly been some positive changes, and I do believe many developers Thank you for subscribing. I missed that name. Seth Goku Kaku. Welcome to the channel. Hey, we'll leave this in here because you decided to subscribe. Thank you for subscribing. I have the notifications still set up in OBS, so when we do live streams, they just pop up, and every once in a while, this is going to happen. I'll leave it in just because it completely stopped me in my tracks. There's certainly been positive change. I do believe many developers and publishers, even large ones, are working in good faith to improve. But those efforts, while commendable, can't address the chronic issues in our industries systematically. In order to do that, game industry employees need to advocacy and representation. Yeah. If you're going to try and push for things to get streamlined across the board, this is what it is, right? There's a lot of things that are going wrong. Like you have overtime that is being pushed down upon people with unrealistic schedules. And that is where the unions could help streamline that with time management and everything like that. There is a lot of talk of pay. Now, with pay, if you take entry-level person A, entry-level person B that have the exact same schooling, the pay should be the same. There shouldn't be a favoritism on both sides. But there's also the other side of the coin where, because it's an open market, person A can be better at negotiating a better pay than person B. And that is what's going on here. There might be someone that says, well, if you want me in your company, you're going to have to pay me $50,000, where person A will just take the first thing that you give them. So that is where the difference is that lies there. And sometimes, because you're in a very competitive space, people can be more competitive. And if the competition's there, that's where you get this bargaining chip push and from. Now, what you're talking about with unionization is now you're going to have people coming out of school. Those people out of school are going to look at the game developers and now know that they're only going to make X money, right? It only makes X amount of dollars, mainly set by the union, not by the company. Now, the union then has the choice, if they're going to, as members, to vote on changes to the wages, to benefits, to everything like that. There is a lot that will come there, but ultimately, I believe unionization in these spaces just isn't going to happen because the goals that the employees want aren't reasonable. And that's where, if you unionize and say this is what we're going to do, there is such a vast amount of people vying for these spaces. They're just going to push that particular workforce and say, you guys can go away. We're going to downsize, cut all these jobs, and then rebuild on the other side. And that is what is going to happen ultimately with Activision Blizzard. The people that have turned around for these protests, I wouldn't be surprised in the near future you hear of mass layoffs at Activision Blizzard. Because they are stopping work on World of Warcraft. It is done. There is nothing new coming out for World of Warcraft. And if that's done, there is no need to continue development. And that means that all those positions are now gone. So in the next month, or at the end of the next quarter, so within 3 months from now, we are going to probably see massive layoffs from Activision Blizzard. We need unionization. Unions were started in this country to protect workers from abusive, cruel, abhorrent, unacceptable, and illegal treatment of companies. So they're saying that the treatment that the company is doing now is toxic because it's the exact same wording he used at the very beginning and the setup for it when, in all intents and purposes, it's not really, that's not the toxic stuff. He's confusing toxic gaming with this cruel and illegal version of treatment of people. That's their true purpose. This week does not show us that our industry colleagues, even the most entry-level QA tester, needed true support and baseline protection. I can't imagine how much worse it will have to get. Well, the main protections that are out there come from your local government. And this is part of my reasoning. I live in Edmonton, Alberta, and there's a lot of things going on with our current government where things are eroding on the worker basis. I just personally don't like where they're going. I think a lot of protections are being taken away by the government in particular, and that's where lobbying your MLAs or lobbying your local governments will do a lot more good than this. This is talking about protections for workers and stuff like that. You can easily set up a protection like this by setting up a hotline that is anonymous, and then that gets brought up to senior management, and then senior management will have that there in their face. In my current work, we have things called communication cards, and on these communication cards, we can put things that are where we see things are not right in the workforce. I work in an environment that has a lot of hazards and a lot of safety things, and they do have those things. But this ultimately is more like a suggestion box, or can be used like a suggestion box. And if the company is willing to take those suggestions seriously, then it's on paper, it's documented, and if you have someone taking up the reins, if you have this hotline that's set up and those suggestions are put to the hotline, then there's documentation of it and it goes down there. And then in 2 weeks' time, if that hasn't been asked, you go, this was, here's the date, here's what happened, why hasn't this been addressed? That's plain and simple. If you create a paper trail, it will do things in the long run. More paper, yes, means more things that you got to do, but ultimately, that's where it goes. If you are an employee right now of Blizzard Activision and you really are looking at this and seeing things going on, document everything. Document your day. Write down your interactions with everyone. Write down what you said to Joe at the water cooler. Write down stuff that's going on. Plain and simple. Where are we? I'm an entrepreneur and a veteran of 3 successful independent studio startups. I'm highly familiar with the financial, legal, contractual, and organizational aspects of game development. I also know that I have nothing to fear from unionization, nor does any company that pays employees fairly and equitably. You're not looking for equity. You're looking for equality. Unionization is not equitable. It doesn't work. A union will be brought in to help equalize pay, equalize everything. You're looking for equity. So now you're looking to put someone on a pillar and pay them more to be in that position. This is wrong, and this is why I believe the unions in the area are not going towards that. Provides quality health insurance. Yep. Models respect and civility for female people of color, LGBTQ plus employees. How about for they do models respect and civility of all employees? Just because you happen to fall into these categories doesn't mean you get special treatment. And supports a healthy whole life. What he is asking for here is to put people on a pedestal and treat them as kings, queens, and gods compared to everyone else in the company. This is not how you fix the situation. This is why this lawsuit and this walkout and everything is destined to fail. The shareholders are going to walk away from this, and ultimately, this spells disaster for the entire workforce. And when everything is said and done, at the end of the year, we're going to see Activision Blizzard coming out of this smelling like roses. Well, I'm going to end that there. If you guys want to see the rest of this, it's on IGN. You guys, thanks for watching. This is your proud Canadian Phoenix. Have yourselves a great day. We will see you all next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe.